The US Mint just made a move that has left every silver collector absolutely speechless. I'm holding physical proof in my hands right now. Something I bought for $95 just 2 days ago. And today, if you want the exact same coin, you'll have to pay $173. That's not a typo. The Mint has almost doubled the price overnight on every single silver item. But here's what they don't want you to know. I managed to secure a secret order just hours before they shut everything down. And what I discovered about their new pricing strategy will blow your mind. Because this isn't just about higher prices, this is about something much bigger happening behind closed doors at the US Mint. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why I'm saying we will never see prices like this again. Welcome, my dear friends, to Currency Fictions. Now listen, I know many of you wise folks have been stacking silver longer than I've been alive, and you've seen plenty of price swings in your time. But I promise you, what happened at the Mint this week is absolutely unprecedented. Do me a favor, will you? If you appreciate honest, no-nonsense information about what's really happening in the precious metals world, go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. Think of it as joining a trusted circle of friends who look out for each other. And while you're at it, drop a comment and tell me, where in the world are you watching this from today? Are you in Texas, California, maybe somewhere overseas? I'd love to know who's part of our Currency Fictions family. Now let's dive into this absolute madness. The new United States Mint director was facing his first major controversy, and it wasn't looking good. Something had just appeared on the official US Mint website that left experienced collectors staring at their screens in complete disbelief. Revised pricing. But this wasn't just a small adjustment. This was a price explosion that nobody saw coming. Our narrator, a seasoned silver stacker and coin enthusiast, had been watching the Mint's website carefully for months. He knew something was brewing when silver prices started climbing higher and higher. But what he discovered when he logged into the Mint's website that fateful morning left him absolutely stunned. Every single silver item available at the United States Mint had almost doubled in price overnight. Not 10%, not 20%, but nearly 100% increases across the board. He sat there, looking at the numbers on his screen, trying to process what he was seeing. How could this be possible? How could the Mint justify such massive price hikes? The profit margins they were going to make from this were absolutely mind-boggling. Now, he had no problem with businesses making a fair profit. That's how the world works. The United States Mint needed to keep their operations running. It took time and effort to produce these beautiful coins and metals. He understood that much. But these new prices, they were beyond anything he had ever seen before. They were, in his own words, absolutely insane. Little did he know at that moment, he was about to become one of the lucky few who managed to beat the system. You see, just 2 days before this pricing catastrophe went live, he had received a mysterious email from the United States Mint. The email was brief, almost cryptic in its wording. It stated that the Mint would be revising pricing and would likely be stopping the purchase of certain items temporarily. That was it. No explanation. No timeline. No warning about how drastic these changes would be. But our narrator, being the experienced collector that he was, knew exactly what this meant. It meant one thing and one thing only. Act fast or miss out forever. He immediately went into what he later described as frenzy mode. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he navigated through the Mint's website, adding items to his cart, calculating totals, making split-second decisions about what to buy. He placed his first order approximately 2 days before the shutdown. His heart was racing as he clicked the final Confirm Purchase button. The order went through successfully. But he wasn't done yet. He knew there might be more time, more opportunity to grab items at the old prices, so he kept watching, kept waiting, kept refreshing that website. Then came the second order. This one was placed in an absolute race against time. He selected his items, rushed through the checkout process, and submitted his payment information. The confirmation email arrived in his inbox. He had made it. But here's the truly crazy part. Just hours after he placed that second order, the United States Mint shut down the entire silver purchasing system on their website. Everything went dark. No more American Silver Eagles, no more presidential medals, no more Morgan dollars or peace dollars, nothing. The website now displayed those dreaded words that every collector fears. Remind me when available. His second package was now en route, somewhere between the Mint's facility and his mailbox, traveling through the postal system carrying what would soon become some of the most valuable purchases he had ever made from the US Mint. As he sat there in his collection room, surrounded by decades worth of coins and metals, he realized something profound. This was historic. This was a moment that would never happen again at the United States Mint. Silver prices had gotten completely away from them. The Mint had miscalculated, misjudged, or simply been caught off guard by how fast and how high silver had climbed. And there were people like him, stackers and collectors who had been paying attention, who took advantage of the situation instead of being taken advantage of. Now, he wanted to be clear about something. This wasn't about being sneaky or doing anything wrong. The mint had set their prices. Those prices were publicly available, and anyone could have purchased at those rates. He just happened to be one of the people who acted quickly when opportunity knocked. People don't have to buy from the U.S. Mint. Nobody's forcing anyone to purchase their products. The Mint can price their items as high as they want, and people will either buy or they won't. That's the free market at work. But as he looked at the packages that would soon arrive at his door, and as he prepared to share with the world exactly what he had purchased and what those same items now cost, he knew one thing for certain. The silver game at the U.S. Mint had changed forever, and what was coming in those packages would prove just how insane this situation had truly become. The delivery truck pulled up to his driveway on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. But what was inside those plain brown boxes was anything but ordinary. He had been tracking these packages obsessively for days, refreshing the shipping page every few hours, watching as they moved from facility to facility, getting closer and closer to his home. And now, they were finally here. He carried the first box inside with unusual care, almost reverence, not because these items were particularly fragile, but because he knew what they represented. These were the last silver pieces he would ever buy from the U.S. Mint at reasonable prices, the last remnants of an era that had just ended. He set the box on his desk, grabbed his letter opener, and carefully sliced through the packing tape. Inside, wrapped in layers of protective material, was his first acquisition, the 2023 American Silver Liberty Medal. He pulled it from its packaging and held it up to the light. The silver gleamed beautifully, catching the afternoon sun streaming through his window. This particular medal had cost him just about regular bullion price. In fact, when he compared it to current spot prices as he recorded his findings, this medal was actually cheaper than what he would pay for a standard American silver eagle right now. Think about that for a moment. A collectible medal, with artistic design and limited mintage, purchased for less than a basic bullion coin. It was almost unbelievable, but it was real, and it was sitting right there in his hands. He carefully set it aside and reached back into the box. Next came something he had ordered months ago, approximately 6 months earlier to be exact. It had taken forever to ship, but it was finally here, the Batman medal. Now, this piece was different from everything else in his collection. This was a 2.5-ounce high-relief medal featuring the iconic DC Comics character. And he had to admit, the design was absolutely spectacular. The detail work was incredible. Every line and shadow perfectly captured in silver. But here's the thing about this particular medal. It came with not one, but two premiums attached to it. First, there was the regular U.S. Mint premium that all their products carry. And second, there was the DC Comics licensing fee built into the price. Batman doesn't come cheap, even in silver form. He had paid approximately $275 for this piece. Expensive? Absolutely. But when he saw the craftsmanship, when he felt the weight of it in his hands, he understood why collectors were willing to pay that premium. However, there was one thing that disappointed him greatly: the packaging. For a $275 collectible medal, he expected something impressive. What he got was, in his own words, very, very cheap. The concept was decent enough, but the execution was poorly done. Flimsy materials, basic design, nothing special whatsoever. He felt they should have simply placed it in a standard clamshell case with some quality artwork behind it. That would have been far more appropriate for a piece of this caliber. But regardless of the packaging disappointment, the medal itself was stunning. He placed it carefully on his desk next to the Liberty Medal. 2 down, several more to go. He reached into the box again, his anticipation building with each item. Next up, another Proof American Silver Eagle. These magnificent coins had been selling for just above spot price, an absolute steal considering their beauty and collectability. He had wanted to grab another one while he still could, and looking at it now, he was so glad he did. Here's something remarkable. This coin, purchased in transit while silver prices were climbing, would have actually been cheaper than buying a regular bullion silver eagle by the time it arrived. The timing had worked out perfectly in his favor. He held the proof coin carefully, admiring its mirror-like finish and frosted design elements. These were the kinds of pieces that made collecting worthwhile. But this wasn't just about adding nice coins to his collection. This was about something much bigger. This was historic. He kept using that word, historic, because that's exactly what this moment was. Never again would collectors see prices like this at the United States Mint. Silver prices had completely gotten away from them, and there were a handful of people, himself included, who had managed to take advantage of the situation before the door slammed shut forever. As he continued unpacking, examining each piece with growing satisfaction, he couldn't help but think about all the collectors out there who had missed this opportunity, people who had hesitated, waited, or simply didn't see the warning signs. Those collectors would now be facing the new reality, the new prices that were about to shock the entire numismatic community. But he wasn't thinking about that right now. Right now, he was focused on the remaining treasures still waiting in that box, including 2 presidential medals that held special significance, and prices so low they seemed almost impossible. The best was yet to come. He pushed aside the crumpled packing paper and peered deeper into the box. His collection was growing by the minute, but the most fascinating pieces were still hidden beneath the layers. What came next would connect American history, artistic brilliance, and impossible pricing into something truly extraordinary. His fingers wrapped around a velvet pouch, heavier than expected. He loosened the drawstring and carefully slid out a silver medal that made him pause. The Thomas Jefferson Presidential Medal. But this wasn't just any commemorative piece featuring a former president. This medal held secrets that most collectors would never even notice. He turned it over in his hands, studying every detail with the intensity of a detective examining evidence. The price he paid? $90, just $90. Now, here's where things get absolutely wild. While this medal was in transit, traveling from the mint to his mailbox, the spot price of silver had climbed to $93 per ounce. Read that again, slowly. He had purchased a collectible medal with artistic design, with historical significance, for less than the raw silver content was worth. The U.S. Mint had literally sold him silver below melt value. It was like walking into a jewelry store and buying a gold ring for less than the gold itself was worth. This kind of thing simply doesn't happen in the precious metals world. But it had happened, and he had the proof sitting right there in his palm. However, the price wasn't even the most interesting part of this particular medal. He flipped it over, examining the portrait of Thomas Jefferson closely. This exact portrait, this specific artistic rendering of America's 3rd president, was about to become very familiar to millions of Americans, because this very same portrait was going to appear on the new Declaration of Independence quarter coming out this year. Every time someone received change at a store, every time they checked their pocket, they would be seeing this exact image of Jefferson. But he would own it in pure silver, acquired at an impossible price. He smiled and set the Jefferson medal aside, creating a growing display of his historic purchases. But there was one more presidential piece waiting in that box, and this one had a story that connected to perhaps the most beautiful coin ever created in American history. He reached in and pulled out the final medal, Theodore Roosevelt. The moment he saw it, he understood why he had to have this piece. The design work was extraordinary, museum-quality craftsmanship that immediately caught the eye. But here's what made this medal truly special. It was designed by none other than Augustus St. Gaudens, the same legendary artist who created what many consider the most beautiful gold coin in the world, the $20 St. Gaudens Double Eagle. That gold coin, minted in the early 1900s, is still revered today as the pinnacle of American coin design. Collectors pay enormous premiums just to own one, and here, in his hands, he held another St. Gaudens masterpiece. The same artistic vision, the same attention to detail, the same brilliant execution. The medal showed a young Theodore Roosevelt, captured in stunning relief. You could see the strength in his features, the determination in his expression, everything that made Roosevelt one of America's most dynamic presidents. Roosevelt himself had been instrumental in bringing St. Gaudens into the coin design process. It was Roosevelt who wanted American coinage to rival the great coins of ancient Greece and Rome. It was Roosevelt who pushed for artistic excellence over simple functionality, and St. Gaudens had delivered beyond anyone's expectations. Now, holding this presidential medal, he could see that same flavor of genius in every line and curve. But the reverse side of the medal held its own fascinating story. It displayed Roosevelt's 2 terms as president. First, when he assumed office, after the tragic assassination of William McKinley in 1901, Roosevelt had been the youngest president in American history at that point. Then the second term, officially inaugurated on March 4th, 1905. That date caught his attention. March 4th? Most people today don't realize that presidential inaugurations used to happen in March, not January. It wasn't until the 20th Amendment was ratified that Inauguration Day moved to January 20th. These little historical details, embedded in the medals he was collecting, made each piece so much more than just silver. They were time capsules, history lessons, artistic achievements, all rolled into one tangible object that he could hold in his hand. He arranged all the pieces on his desk now: the Liberty Medal, the Batman Medal, the Proof Silver Eagle, the Jefferson Medal, the Roosevelt Medal. Silver gleamed everywhere under the lights of his collection room. collector-grade silver in both metal and coin form, all acquired at prices that defied logic. It was astonishing, almost surreal, that he had managed to grab these items at such bargain prices. His mind kept returning to that same thought. This was absolutely mind-boggling. But now came the moment of truth, the moment where he would reveal to the world exactly what these items cost him, and more importantly, what those exact same items would cost anyone trying to buy them today. The price comparison was about to shock everyone who heard it. He laid out all his receipts on the desk, creating 2 columns that would tell a devastating story. On the left, what he had paid just days ago. On the right, what those exact same items cost today. The comparison was about to expose something that bordered on unbelievable. He took a deep breath and started with the presidential medals, the Thomas Jefferson Medal and the Theodore Roosevelt Medal. He had paid $90 each for these masterpieces of American numismatic art. $90. The Liberty Medal? $95. The Proof American Silver Eagle? $97. The Batman High Relief Medal? $275. These were the prices that had existed just 48 hours earlier. Prices that seemed perfectly reasonable, perhaps even generous given the silver content and collectability. But then, everything changed. He pulled up the current U.S. Mint website on his computer screen, and what he saw made his jaw drop, even though he had been preparing himself for this moment. That Proof American Silver Eagle he bought for $97? The website now showed it listed at $173. The item was currently on Remind Me status, meaning it wasn't even available for purchase yet. But when it did become available again, anyone wanting to buy that exact same coin would have to pay $173, from $97 to $173. That wasn't a price adjustment. That was a price explosion. The numbers were absolutely mind-blowing, insane, crazy beyond comprehension. But wait, it gets even worse. If someone wanted the uncirculated version of that Silver Eagle instead of the Proof, the price was $169. Think about what that means for a moment. The gap between Proof and uncirculated pricing had completely changed. Normally, the Proof version commands a higher premium because of its special finish and presentation, but now the pricing structure seemed almost arbitrary. He continued down the list, each revelation more shocking than the last. The Morgan dollar in uncirculated condition, $169, same as the Silver Eagle. The Proof Morgan dollar, $173. The Peace dollar, identical pricing structure, $173 for Proof, $169 for uncirculated. Everything had nearly doubled across the board, but here's where things got truly insane. He had also purchased the Morgan and Peace dollar reverse Proof 2-coin set in another order. That set had cost him $215, a fair price for 2 premium coins with special reverse proof finishes. The current price for that same set, $375, from $215 to $375. That's an increase of $160, or roughly 75% higher. He sat back in his chair, staring at the numbers in disbelief. These weren't minor adjustments to account for rising silver prices. These were massive overhauls of the entire pricing structure. And the silver proof sets, those had completely disappeared from the website initially. When they finally returned, the price tag read $245. $245 for a silver proof set. He remembered when those sets sold for less than half that amount. His mind was reeling, but he forced himself to continue the comparison. The 1-ounce medals, those beautiful presidential and military series pieces, used to cost around $90 to $100 depending on the specific design. The current price, $164 across the board. His American Liberty 2023 silver medal, purchased for $97, now carried a price tag of $170, but the absolute crown jewel of insanity, that Batman High Relief medal he had paid $275 for. The website now listed it at $400. $400 for a 2.5-ounce silver medal. No matter how beautiful the design, that was an absolutely staggering premium. And as he checked the website in real time while recording his findings, these items still weren't available for purchase. The "Remind Me when available" message mocked every collector who had missed the window. He leaned forward, doing some quick calculations in his head. It was one thing to raise prices by 10 or 15%. That would be understandable given market conditions. Even 20% might be pushing it, but still justifiable. But to raise prices by 50, 70, even nearly 100% in some cases, that was beyond anything he had ever witnessed in decades of collecting. The question burning in his mind was simple. Would people actually pay these prices? His gut told him yes. Unfortunately, yes. There would still be collectors who wanted these items badly enough, who had the disposable income to absorb these increases, who simply had to complete their sets regardless of cost. And he had to be honest with himself. He would probably still buy some items from the mint this year despite these insane prices. The semi-quincentennial celebration was coming. America's 250th birthday. Special commemorative coins would be released. Historic pieces that would never be minted again. He couldn't imagine missing those, even at inflated prices. But then his thoughts turned to the new mint director, Mr. Hollis. Did he even know this was happening? Had he approved these massive price increases, or had they been implemented by bureaucrats below him? He genuinely hoped the director would review the situation, would examine whether these prices made sense for the long-term health of the collector market, would perhaps crack down on this aggressive pricing strategy. But that might be wishful thinking. The reality was clear and unavoidable. If you wanted to buy silver products from the United States Mint in 2026, you were going to pay a lot of money, far more than anyone had anticipated. He picked up that 1-ounce Wonder Woman medal, another DC Comics collaboration. The price? $200. $200 for a single ounce of silver. That was more than double the current spot price of silver, more than double what the raw metal itself was worth. The premium had become, frankly, absurd as he sat surrounded by his recent acquisitions. These beautiful pieces of American silver that he had secured at the old prices. He felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction, because he had acted quickly, had trusted his instincts, had beaten the system. But sadness because he knew what this meant for the hobby he loved. New collectors, younger people trying to start their journey in numismatics, retirees on fixed incomes who enjoyed adding a piece or two to their collection each month. All of these people would now face barriers that simply didn't exist before. The United States Mint had essentially priced out a significant portion of their customer base. He wondered if they understood the long-term implications, whether they had considered how this might damage relationships with loyal collectors, whether they cared at all about accessibility and building the next generation of numismatists. One possibility kept nagging at him, though. Perhaps the Mint was setting these prices deliberately high, with extra cushion built in. Maybe they were preparing to implement a pricing grid system similar to what they use for gold products. A system that automatically adjusts prices based on precious metal spot prices. If that was the plan, then these initial high prices might just be padding. Extra headroom to protect the Mint from volatile silver price swings. After all, silver had been moving $3, $4, $5, sometimes $6 in a single day recently. That kind of volatility made it nearly impossible to maintain stable pricing. Maybe, just maybe, once a proper pricing grid was established, the prices might come back down somewhat, stabilizing at more reasonable levels. But that was pure speculation on his part. He had no inside information, no confirmation, nothing but educated guesses. The only thing he knew for certain was what he could see right in front of him. Items he bought for $95 now cost $173. Items he bought for $215 now cost $375. The American Silver Eagle, the Morgan & Peace dollars, the presidential medals, all of them had experienced massive price increases, seemingly overnight. And here's something else that bothered him. The Morgan & Peace dollars weren't even full-ounce coins. They contained less than an ounce of silver, yet they were selling for the exact same price as a proof American Silver Eagle, which was a full ounce. How did that make sense from a value perspective? It didn't. But sense and logic seemed to have left the building when these new prices were implemented. He turned to face his camera, preparing to wrap up his documentation of this historic moment. His final question to fellow collectors everywhere. Would they pay $164 for a 1-ounce silver medal? Would they shell out $173 for a proof Silver Eagle? Would they continue supporting the U.S. Mint at these new price levels? Or would they walk away, redirecting their precious metals budget to bullion dealers and private mints? These were questions only time would answer. But as he looked one more time at the treasures spread across his desk, the silver gleaming under the lights, each piece a work of art and history, he felt profound gratitude that he had acted when he did. He had beaten the clock. He had secured pieces of numismatic history at prices that would never exist again. The United States Mint had made a dramatic move. Whether calculated or chaotic, intentional or reactive, the result was the same. The age of affordable U.S. Mint silver had ended, and he had captured the last moments, the final bargains, the closing chapter. This was history, and he had lived it, collected it, and preserved it in silver. Now the only question that remained was, what would the Mint do next?